After your recent trial for hate speech, you didn't sound very repentant, very sorry.
No, I'm not, you know. How can I be? I really said nothing wrong. And in the crazy Dutch jurisprudence, it's not even our law. I think I'm the first Dutchman who is convicted for something that is not in the law. Because the judge decided that Moroccans, which as you know is a nationality, has to be seen as a race. Dale, the reason I said it was because 80% of the Dutch jihadis who go to fight in Syria are Moroccans. 80%. They are 22 times overrepresented in criminal offenses when it comes to street crime. 60% of the Moroccan youth under the age of 23 has been arrested at least once. So in any poll, it proved that the majority of the Dutch people agreed with me about the Moroccans. And the judge said, because of international jurisprudence, once again, not even in the Dutch law, that Moroccans had to be seen as a race. So if you, in Holland, be careful, tomorrow say that you don't like French, German, or Swedish food or people, you could be called a racist. Of course, this is ridiculous. I did nothing wrong, and that's why I will appeal this crazy verdict.
Why do you think you've become so popular in the Netherlands?
Well, you know, because like with, I'm not comparing myself with Donald Trump or anybody else, but, you know, the people are fed up with politicians ignoring the problems. The people are fed up by if they say something about the influx of the mass immigration from mostly Islamic countries, what they really feel as a threat, what really is a threat, they are being called racist if they make a remark about, hey, this is not our country anymore. Those are common people. People who also want that refugees have to have safe shelter, but believe that why not, if people come from Syria and need safe shelter, why not go to find shelter in these rich Gulf states like Kuwait or Qatar or Saudi Arabia, where they have the same religion or ideology, the same language, the same climate, and billions of dollars to spend. So people want to have a safe refugee, but not coming here. And don't forget, and people are very angry about that most of the people who came to Holland were younger people, often young men, who crossed, before coming to Holland, 6 or 7 safe countries in order to be in Holland. If they just wanted to be safe, they would have stopped at Turkey, or maybe if you find Turkey unsafe, in Greece. The fact that they travel through 6 other countries, like former Yugoslavia, Macedonia, Hungary, Austria, Switzerland, France, Germany, Holland, is because they like our social benefits. They like our welfare state. They know which country to pick. They are not going to stay in Hungary or in Estonia. They come to Germany, to Holland. And people sense that those are not the real refugees. And our government has spent billions of euros to them, you know, and the Dutch people know. They have had in the last few years enormous tough austerity measures. Pensions were cut. The public health services for elderly people were cut. Enormous asocial tough measures. And at the same time, people saw, while the government had these enormous austerity measures, that the government spent billions of euros to asylum seekers who really were not asylum seekers, but migrants looking for a better life. And once again, Dale, I don't even blame the people for trying to have a better life here. I blame our government to allow it to happen, to not say enough is enough, you are not a refugee, and we have to defend our own country and close our borders. A country without a border, like Holland, because we are a part of the Schengen Treaty, we are not allowed to control our own border. A country without a border is like a person and a house without a front door. Anybody can enter and you cannot ask anybody to leave. So it's not a real country at all. And we have to get it back, and people sense that that is what they want.
De islam. Dat is toch wel even veel te simpel. Als je kijkt naar allerlei problemen die zich voordoen vanuit islamitische hoek, dan heeft de heer Wilders gelijk in, en dat is door velen, volgens mij ongeveer alle partijen hier benoemd. En daar moeten we snoeihard tegen optreden. Dat moeten we blijven doen, en daar zitten allerlei elementen in het islamitische geloof die daar aanleiding toe geven. Maar de werkelijkheid is dat die een paar honderd jaar geleden ook aanleiding waren vanuit andere geloven om op te treden tegen hun onderdanen. En het gaat mij om heel wat anders. Het gaat mij om het feit dat als wij dit soort radicale ideologische gedachten, maar daar wil ik nog wel niet mee meegaan, als het een ideologie begint te worden. Als dat gebeurt, hoe gaan we die dan bestrijden? Door onze eigen vrijheden en onze eigen waarden op te geven? Of zegt de heer Wilders met mij, wij gaan altijd zorgen dat die vrijheden, die gelijkwaardigheid van man en vrouw, homo, hetero, godsdienstvrijheid, dat dat bij de essentie van Nederland hoort en dat dat altijd ook door de PVV verdedigd zal worden. En als het antwoord op die vraag nee is, dan gooit u die culturele waarden waar Nederland honderden jaren voor heeft gevochten, gooit u zo in de prullenbak.
De heer Wilders.
Mevrouw de voorzitter, laat ik als antwoord op de heer Zijlstra het volgende zeggen. Er is een onderzoek geweest van een geleerde die heet Ruud Koopmans. Ik denk dat veel mensen hem hier wel kennen. Hij werkt als hoogleraar in Berlijn en heeft een onderzoek gedaan. En dat onderzoek is van 2013. En wat zegt dat onderzoek in 2013? Dat onderzoek zegt in 2013 dat 54,5% van de moslims in Nederland terug willen naar de roots, de basis van de islam. Dat 74% van de moslims in Nederland vinden dat er slechts één interpretatie van de Koran en de islam geldig is. 3/4. Mag ik een paar citaten uit de Koran voornoemen, mevrouw de voorzitter? Soera 8, vers 60. Maak voorbereiding tegen hen. Met wat gij wilt, kunt ge de kracht van paarden om te terroriseren. Soera 47, vers 4. Wanneer gij een ontmoeting hebt met ongelovigen, houd dan op de nekken. En wanneer gij onder hen een bloedbad hebt aangericht, bind hen dan in de boeien. Soera 8, vers 39. Voer oorlog tegen hen totdat er geen verzoeking meer is en de godsdienst geheel toebehoort aan Allah. Ik kan zo nog een uur doorgaan. 74,3% van de moslims in Nederland vindt, volgens professor Koopmans, dat er slechts één interpretatie, dit is hem, wordt toegestaan. Meneer Zijlstra, als wij meegaan met uw cultuurrelativisme, gaat Nederland kapot en ik pas daarvoor.
Dutch politician named Geert Wilders has produced a film that says flat out the Koran incites violence. Well, that hypothesis itself is inciting violence, as Mr. Wilders has been threatened and even denied entry to Great Britain. Here's a clip.
Islam is superior than the Jews, than the Christians, than the Buddhists, than the Hindus. The only deen Allah accepts is al-Islam. And whoever seeks any other deen apart from Islam will never be accepted.
You will take over USA. You will take over UK. You will take over Europe. You will defeat them all. You will get victory. You will take over Egypt. We trust in Allah.
With us now is Geert Wilders. See, USA, much more open-minded country than Great Britain, isn't it? You're here. You didn't get hassled, did you?
No, not at all.
All right, you're here on the biggest cable show in the country.
Well, you are a country that, fortunately, unlike the British, is still very fond of free speech.
I didn't like that. You know, I love Great Britain. I'm going there in May, and I studied there for a year. I didn't like the fact they didn't let you in. I thought that was wrong.
I didn't like it either. I mean, even if you disagree with somebody, please give them the room to speak and use your freedom of speech.
But they're afraid. You know what they're afraid.
They are afraid.
They're scared.
And they are not only afraid, but they were threatened with 10,000 Muslims.
Of course. But
you
were threatened. How many times have you been threatened? 5,000? I mean, you know.
I don't know.
And one of your countrymen got killed in the Netherlands.
And I'm for 4.5 years now under 24-hour police protection. I lived with my wife in jails, in prison cells, and whatever. But still, I'm a fighter, and I'm fighting for freedom of speech.
All right, I got to challenge you on this thing.
Sure.
It's 15 minutes, okay? And you got nuts like you showed here. You know Bill Maher is? Bill Maher is an American comedian. He did a documentary film called Ridiculous Religion or something like that.
I was even in that film.
Okay. Now, anybody can make a 15-minute film about religion and make it like it's crazy and, you know, get those guys. You could do that on Christianity, Judaism, Buddhism, whatever. Couldn't you?
No, not a movie like that. I mean, for instance, if you look at terroristic acts, of course it would be crazy to state that all Muslims are terrorists, because they are not. But almost all terrorists, unfortunately, are Muslims. So it would have been impossible to use. I didn't use actors in the film. I used real images combined with certain verses from certain surahs, and it would have been impossible to make that kind of movie about Christianity. And my point exactly is that when you look at the Islam, I'm not talking about the people, I have nothing against Muslims.
Yeah,
but
when
if
you look at the philosophy...
If you look at the ideology of Islam, it's a totalitarian ideology.
But you don't spend much time in the documentary on the Quran itself. And again, you can take the Old Testament and the Bible and pull out all kinds of inflammatory stuff. And I'm saying to myself, what good is... Here's the bottom line on it, sir. What good is this? Most people know in the free world, not in the Muslim world, in the free world, most clear-thinking people know that worldwide terrorism is driven by Islamic fascism. Most people know that. Why do you, what good is you telling them again?
Unfortunately, most people in Europe don't know, especially the political elite, the leadership in Europe. They don't know it. They are afraid. They are what the Arabs call dhimmis. They are afraid of the reality. If I tell you that even today in a European country, Great Britain, the country that banned me and sent me away after detaining me for a few hours, we have already today, when it comes to family law, Sharia courts functioning. I mean, this is Europe today.
But you can't tell me after the London subways got bombed, after your compatriot got murdered in the street of Holland, after they blew up the train in Madrid, after all of these things happened, that Europeans don't know? No. They don't know?
The European
they're
people,
afraid. They're cowards.
They are big, fat cowards.
Okay, so this isn't going to change that.
But the political elite is not acting. What we should do, we should be more proud of our own identity. We should be more proud of our values that are based on Christianity,
so what do you do,
on
throw
Judaism.
Do you throw the Muslims out of Holland?
I will not throw anybody out.
Because you got a big problem over there, don't you?
What I wanted to say is that the first thing we should do in Europe is to stop the immigration from Muslim countries. I would like to halt the immigration from Muslim countries. If you look at the demographics, if you look at the mass immigration, it is changing our society for the worse.
Well, what's the percentage of Muslims? It's 10% in France. Population is 10% Muslim. What is it in the Netherlands?
Well, a little bit less. We have 16 million inhabitants, and 1 million out of them are Muslims. 100 years ago, it was 54 Muslims out of the population, and the numbers is not the only problem. The fact is that at the end of the day, we will lose our freedom, because Islam wants nothing else than to submit other people. They are not in our societies to integrate.
Now, do they call you a racist like they call me here?
Well, you know, they do, but it's very easy that if somebody is not playing the political correct tune to label him a racist or xenophobe, I am not. My party today represents the second biggest party in the polls in the Netherlands. Why? Those people are not racist. Those people are proud on their own Christian identity. They don't want the Netherlands to become an Islamic country. You wouldn't throw them out, but you'd stop the migration. I would stop the migration. I would not throw anybody out, except if they commit violent crimes. Of course, then we can say, well, you are not welcome anymore in this country. And this is really the first thing we should do. What are we doing now? We are, like the United Kingdom, we are bargaining away. We are appeasing. It's as if Mr. Chamberlain is again in office and not Mr. Gordon Brown.
All you have to see is how many troops NATO in Europe sends to Afghanistan, and what Europe does, very small. All right, Mr. Wilders, we hope you stay safe. Thanks for coming in. We appreciate it.
Pleasure to be here. Well, you know, we are not in charge of our own country, our own immigration policy, our own border anymore, and the European Union, together with Turkey and other countries, are making a big mess of stopping the tsunami of migrants from the Middle East and Africa. So the only thing that we should do today is to close our national borders, because when it comes to our own culture, when it comes to the cost, when it comes to terror or security issues, we should take the lead when it comes to controlling our own borders. And in order to do that, I think we should leave both the Schengen Treaty as well as the European Union as a whole.
Leaving the EU, in the UK is actively discussed, but there are a lot of studies that suggest it could be really bad for business and that it could cause the currency to plummet. So how do you assure Dutch citizens that the same thing wouldn't happen to the Netherlands if you left the EU?
Well, we had an independent UK bureau investigate this, and they made a report of us. They worked on it for more than a year. And it proved that after some initial cost, at the end of the day, the Dutch would benefit economically even more. We would have an economical growth of more than 10% extra in the next 8 to 10 years. And of course, this is because, like Switzerland, we would want to leave the European Union but still have access to the internal market. I'm very much in favor of free trade. As Switzerland, we should be in the heart of Europe, but outside the bureaucracy of the European Union. And at the end of the day, if we will still have access to the internal market, which I'm sure that we can have because it's in the interest of all the other countries as well, we will be sovereign. We will be sovereign how to spend our own money. We don't have to spend it to Brussels or to bailouts to countries like Greece. We can spend it to our own citizens. We are in charge over our own borders and immigration policy. So we'll have only benefits. So I hope a lot that at the end of the day, the British citizens will choose that the United Kingdom will leave the European Union, and I'm sure that there will be an enormous incentive for so many other countries, amongst which my own Netherlands, to follow that example and leave the European Union.
Are you on some sort of global jihad against Islam?
Well, indeed, I'm more on a global jihad to preserve our freedom. I believe that even though I have nothing against the people or Muslims or anybody for that reason, I believe that Islam and freedom are incompatible. And I believe that the mistakes that we made in Europe in the last decades by allowing so much mass immigration from Islamic countries is a warning that if Australia is not vigilant enough to preserve their freedom, what has happened here might happen to Australia in the next decades as well.
So, very precisely, you plan to warn Australian audiences of what you see as the danger of Islamic migration, is that correct?
Well, yeah, I believe that, once again, Islam and freedom are incompatible. Islam is, according to me and my party, not so much a religion as well as it is a totalitarian ideology. In Islam, there is not much room for anything else but Islam. Look how in societies today where Islam is dominant and prominent, how any non-Islamic person, whether it's a Christian or an apostate or a woman or a critical journalist, how they are treated. This is in a very bad way, often with the death penalty or imprisonment or all those kind of terrible things. And I believe that with the mass immigration to our free societies, our societies will change, and it will change for the worst. And I'm proud to say, and you are not a racist or a bigot or anything like that, if you say that the Netherlands, as Australia, is a culture based on Christianity, on Judaism, on humanism, and it's certainly not, nor should it ever will become, a society based on Islamic values. We should fight it, we should stop it, we should be proud on who we are and define what we are not.
I'm going to pick you up on some of those points in a little while, but what do you actually know about the Islamic community in Australia? What have you heard about what is happening here and Australian multiculturalism, which it seems to me could be quite different to multiculturalism in Holland?
Of course that's the case. I'm not saying that it's exactly the same. I know, and I also spoke in the United States of America and in Canada and other countries where they have good results with immigration, that it cannot be compared everything to Europe. But I know that where we today in Europe have an enormous influx of, in the last decades, of people from Islamic countries, that our society has changed, that it has worsened for that reason, that unfortunately non-Western immigrants, often Muslims, are overrepresented in statistics of crime, of dependency on social benefits, that we have honor killings, that we have genital mutilation, that we have streets where women with headscarves and burqas are not the exception anymore, and that it's getting worse. And what I'm trying to do when I visit your beautiful country, Australia, is warn Australians that even though it might not be the case today, learn from the mistakes that we made in Europe, be vigilant and look at Islam for what it really is. Islam is not a religion of peace. Islam is a totalitarian ideology. The best example is that if any person, any Muslim wants to leave Islam, then the penalty is death. It is not even allowed to leave it. And that's why I believe Islam should not so be compared with other religions like Christianity or Judaism, but Islam should be compared to other totalitarian ideologies like communism or fascism.